Hello, and welcome back to the Excellence Foresight podcast, the space where we explore strategies, insights, and practical tools to drive meaningful change in organizations and support leaders in their journey. I'm your host, Nancy Noemi, and today I'm honored to have Don Ringrose, a friend, an expert in organizational excellence, and a thought leader on performance benchmarking. Welcome, Don. Don is the Principal of Organizational Excellence Specialist Canada and will be sharing the Organizational Excellence framework that she had developed and the Global Index for Organizational Excellence associated to it, its impact on organization, and how it can guide them to achieve high standard. Don, thank you very much for being with us, me here today. Would you like
It's
maybe
a
to
pleasure,
share some?
Nancy.
Excellent. You'd like to share something else about yourself with our audience before we start?
I'll just give people a quick little snapshot here. I've been involved with excellence models since they were first introduced in the late 80s, early 1990s, and it's been an area that's really captivated my interest, and I'm very passionate about it. So I'm very pleased to speak with you about the work that I've been doing today.
Excellent, and it's wonderful to have you here on the podcast, Don. And I know we have a lot of stories to share with our audience today. So to begin, can you tell us a little bit about the Global Index for Organizational Excellence? What is it, and how did it come about?
Well, it came about back in 2015. I'm a member of the Organizational Excellence Technical Committee at the Quality Management Division of ASQ. And on that committee are a lot of representatives around the world that are affiliated with various excellence models. And my a model that I had developed was back in 2010. I had the idea to put together all the definitions that we find in all of the excellence models, the leading excellence models in particular. And I wanted to put everything in one place. So we had definitions of the principles, the practices, the measures. And then what I did was I added to that, which to me was a very big gap in the literature, was implementation guidelines that we use as seasoned professionals. And along with that publication, I developed a turnkey toolkit to assist with implementation. And one of the items in the turnkey toolkit was an automated assessment and reporting system. And so there was an individual on the Organizational Excellence Technical Committee. We were discussing what we could do as a team. And there was an individual there that said, hey, why don't we use your assessment tool to do this study, that had this research that had never been done before? And I said, yes. And I must say that when I look back on that now, I didn't know what I was getting myself into because it was a voluntary project. And it ended up being quite a bit more work than I had ever imagined. But the work has been so rewarding because it's been so insightful and interesting. And I continue to be amazed at the data and information that we've gathered to reveal what the current state of excellence is in the world by size, industry sector, region, and country. And perhaps a unique feature of this, really, in a lot of respects, is that respondents completing the assessment have varying levels of awareness about excellence models. Some have never heard of them, right through to those that are using them.
I think this is, wonderful. I've seen the kit, I've seen the global index and the results done, and I think there's a lot to learn from. And it's something, really encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. I think it's been a great journey, and there's a lot still you can give to that. So, if I can go back a little bit to the global index, and you mentioned that you took a lot of definitions and a lot of concepts and put them into the framework, and then you came up with the global index. What does what does make the global index unique compared to other performance benchmarking tools out there?
Well, it's absolutely unique in that this sort of work has never been done before. In the excellence field, a lot of work has been done to validate that excellence models work. And when you implement the practices, you develop a culture committed to excellence, and you go on to achieve results across a balanced system of measurement. So that's been nailed down, and we've got lots of wonderful role models and lots of wonderful research that's been done around the world about that. But no one in the last few decades has ever asked the question of what is the current state of excellence of organizations in general out there. And so this is what this study has done, and it's revealed that. And I'm very confident now, given the number of respondents, that we've got a pretty clear picture what the current state of excellence is by all of these principles and these practices. And we've got a good handle on the extent to which organizations have got a culture characterized by the principles and have to the extent to which they've implemented the practices and are using the measures and so forth.
Yeah, I liked your mentioning culture, and I think there's a lot we don't know about the culture of organization, the culture of excellence, and what makes that some organizations succeed and others not. So I want to maybe if you can just allow us a little bit and give us some data around the current state of global organizational excellence now.
Well, we've got two rating scales that we use. For the principles that describe a culture committed to excellence, we're using a subjective scale. And so when respondents take a look at the extent to which they've got these principles that are part of their culture, it's like a gut feel, from low, medium to high. And when we look at the practices that are in all the key management areas, here we're asking for considerably more detail because we're using an objective scale. And that requires the respondent to think about each practice and the approach they're using, the extent to which it's deployed, whether or not they're getting good results. And so it's a much more objective scale. And so we're getting, a much, a different rating. And we've got, again, a rating scale that goes from just beginning to good start to doing well to high performance. And then in addition to the ratings, we've got the open-ended comments that they provide as well. And this is where there's an absolute wealth of data. If I was to print all those open-ended comments out, I'd probably have about 600 pages. So to me, that's where we've got some very interesting information, and it really gives us the rationale for the ratings and helps us better understand. And so I think that for the most part, around the world, the index, if we're looking at an overall average, I think we'll see that organizations are off to a good start. Most organizations are in the good start range there for the key management areas, but on the principles, they've rated themselves a little bit higher, and they've got themselves in the medium high range.
Okay, that's interesting to know.
Mhm.
I think we still have a lot to do. Organizations have still a lot to do when it comes to excellence. So it's a journey, like we say, right? So they need to start somewhere, but once they start, they need to be able to keep progressing. And I think having a benchmarking tool will allow them to see where they are and see how to plan for the future and keep improving, which is, I think, it's a great thing to do. So then my follow-up question here is, based on your experience, how can organizations align their strategic objectives with their performance improvement efforts through the use of the assessment, and what metrics they should be having in place, and what's important around using the right metrics is?
Well, that's a really good question. When an organization comes up with their strategic plan, it's driven by the vision of what they want to become in the future, and it's directly aligned with other things in the model, such as the business plan, the human resource plan, the work processes that people undertake, the measurements that are used to provide feedback on performance. And so you'll see that through the principle of alignment. You'll see how everything cascades from the strategic plan throughout the organization, and then feedback is provided by the metrics that are used back to the organization if they're measuring certain things. And we know that the four measures that are used by micro-sized organizations should be measures that all organizations are using, and that those are the quality of the product or service, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and then financial measures to provide feedback on performance. Now you can have a few more measures if you're a larger size organization, and you can choose from the ones that we have in the Organizational Excellence Framework publication in Chapter 9. These are good measures to use because they're used around the world and be great for benchmarking or learning from others, or just good feedback for your organization. So you choose the ones that are most relevant for your organization. And one thing that leaders should really be conscious of when they're using an excellence model is the system that it provides. And it's the system of these principles and practices that are interrelated and interconnected and help you get your organization from where it is today to where you want it to be tomorrow. And there's a document on the homepage of our website called Interrelationships, and you can see exactly what these are. And it shows you the touch points between the principles and the practices. So in other words, the influence that certain practices have on the principles such as, let's say, focus on the customer. You know, what practices are directly related to that? Societal commitment, that's another one. What practices are directly related to that? And so you can see the influence that the practices have on the principles, and so you know what to work on. You know, if you've got low ratings in a particular area, within the publication too, you'll find the direct relationships between the practices themselves. So in other words, we know that the business plan is very related to the strategic plan and so forth. So this whole concept of interrelationships is really, really important because it gives you an appreciation of the system. And that system has got to be working really well together for the organization to perform well. So that's a concept I think it's important to embed in your organization and in the minds of leadership.
Excellent. So, do you have any specific advice you would like to give leaders who would like to maybe use the global index and do the assessment on how would that help them in making meaningful changes in their organization?
What I always encourage leaders to do is involve and engage all of their employees, or at least a segment of their employees that can then transfer knowledge to the other employees. But in the ideal circumstance, what we like to do is train people about excellence so that they know what it is and why it's important and how they're all part of achieving excellence. And then we engage them in a self-assessment against the model. And so they get a chance to self-assess against the principles and the practices across these key management areas and provide their open-ended comments. And we deliver a report that shares those results and findings, but it also, for the low-rated practices, it generates individual action plans. And the individual action plans, we've got space on those where we can assign responsibility to employees, whether it's an individual or a team. We've got timing that this should be, they should work on this. We've got any out-of-pocket costs. Usually there's not too many. And we've got a method of measurement to gauge progress. So what we have in this report is a game plan for the organization to use over the next year or 2 or 3, depending on how much they have to do. And then what we like to do is support the leader. Every organization is different. Some will say we can do this on our own. Others will say, gee, we need a little bit of training in some of these areas. And yet others will say, oh boy, we need quite a bit of hand-holding. And so they proceed on that basis. It really depends on the level of sophistication that they have in their organization. And sometimes it's the time available to work on this. So we're willing to help support them in any way we can. And I'd say each and every time we've ever done an assessment with a leader, I always hear a similar refrain. It's they're really pleased with the information that they receive and the game plan they have to charts the course forward and really lightens their load because they've got all their employees working on this. But I always hear them say about certain aspects of the information that they receive, oh my goodness, I never knew about that. That's something we can do. We can address right away. And so the things that come out of the assessment, there's these aha moments that are really valuable for the leaders. And it's them hearing back what their employees have to say. And that's so important with regards to improvement because employees have got ideas and suggestions. They've got maybe some things that are bothering them, and it just sheds an awful lot of light on what's going on in their organization, and it's a tremendous value to them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value by like it's an eye opener. Like you said, those aha moments are very important for leaders to they don't know everything's happening in their organization. So when they are put under the microscope somehow and they get that information, I think it's really very valuable to them. So I don't see the global index as just a tool for assessment done. I see it more as a mean to build a culture of excellence, right, within organization. So you shared with us a lot of nice tips on how leaders could leverage this the data that comes from the global index and from their own assessment. Is there anything particular that you've noticed in the latest report that you would like to share? Something new, maybe that a new trend?
What I see in the latest report, because we've now got about 4,000 respondents, is we have the ability to take a look at about 11 industry sectors in a fair degree of detail. We've got enough data to report back with confidence on that. And so we see in these industry sectors, some are good at some things or falling behind in other areas. So I think that's particularly valuable. Behind the scenes, we also have quite a bit of information on about 20 countries, and that's always growing. And so we can do, a profile on a given country if need be as well. But I'm hoping we can make sure that we have that degree of detail for all 21 industry sectors that are part of the assessment. So we're well on our way, and we're very close in some other industry sectors. So I think that we're getting quite close to that desired sample size that we wanted in order to speak confidently about the results. And we only report what we have enough data to report. I've been pretty strict about that.
Well, one interesting thing that organizations usually look for is also benchmarking with others in their geography or other, geographic areas. So do you see differences between, like, if we talk about, for example, the Middle East, Europe, the respondents from North America, do you see differences in the level of excellence that exists there?
Well, you do see it in by the regions, given the respondents that we have. And what comes through to me is how passionate people are about excellence and striving for
Mhm.
it. And I see great passion right now in the Middle East. And I see growing interest and passion in Africa. What I see, which is very interesting to me, is in North America, it's like we've fallen asleep. We were on this back in when models were first introduced. I mean, the leading models were, EFQM and from Europe and Baldrige from the United States, the Canadian framework and the Australian framework. And so these countries got off to a great start way back when.
Mhm.
And they were going great guns maybe in the first 10 years of that. But then they seem to have, I don't know, I think leadership sometimes um, is victim to being attracted to the latest flavor of the week and trying
Absolutely.
things that are for short-term gain, but not a long-term platform for success. And so they kind of took their eye off the ball, I think, in a lot of ways. And so what we see is North America, and that's Canada and the United States, we see them trailing behind other regions now. And I've noticed that not only by doing this research, I've noticed it by being on global committees as well and listening to people from around the world that work in excellence and work in benchmarking, talk about what they're doing. And I see the results of what they're doing as well. And so I think I can confidently say by both the index and the experience I've had on these global boards and committees that North America is falling behind, and I think they got to wake up and smell the coffee.
I think this is really, I mean, very interesting thought here. And having worked in the Middle East, I see also that maybe sometimes we don't really spend a lot of time on putting solid foundation for things, which could be harmful
Yeah.
for excellence. So we look at quick wins rather than long-term maybe successes. That also sometimes is not in favor of organizations. It might be good to win an award, but it after a couple of years, if you don't maintain that, if you don't keep improving, that's gonna I mean, be in detriment of the success of the organization and people, like you mentioned earlier, people need something like to get attached to, right? To be motivated, to be able to continuously improve, and that goes back to leadership. So if we look
Yeah.
at the differences between the different regions and how there are different approaches in the Middle East and
Mhm.
in North America or in Africa, what what one advice you would like to give leaders in these regions?
Oh boy, this is a topic of great interest for me, and this is one of the things that really attracted me to excellence models in the first place. Is here we had this beautiful big umbrella of principles and practices that are common to high performing organizations, and within that, you'll find ISO standards, you'll find approaches like Lean and Six Sigma, um, and you'll find the ability to put this in place generally, or you can take a deep dive into any particular practice if you've got the expertise or you're working with people that have the expertise to be very, very sophisticated with it. And I think what's important is that you take full advantage of the people in your organization that have expertise in these areas, or the others from outside that you're working with that have expertise in these areas, and they can appreciate how it all knits together, because it not only offers you this long-term platform for success that's tried and true, we know that through the research, but it allows you to progress to the extent that you wish. And so it takes all those approaches that you might favor into account, and it allows you to do things generally or very in a very sophisticated fashion, and to work with the expertise that you have at your fingertips, or with the experts that you wish to have you accompany on your journey. So I think that's something that people don't realize. They feel like they have to choose, oh, we're ISO, or we're Lean, or we're
Yeah.
Six Sigma, or we follow this model. I don't think that that's the point. I think the point is we've got some principles and practices here that are common to high performing organizations. We know there's a formula for success if you put this in place, and it's been validated through the research since about 1990. So look no further. You have this robust kind of management system that works.
I think this is great advice. And you said like this is really a formula for success. And when
Yeah.
we work with excellence models, we always ask this question, are they compatible with other things? If I'm using this model now, can I continue with that another model? That's absolutely feasible and possible because they are holistic. They look at everything in the organization. They look at how these systems work together. And once you have that, it will be easy to plug and play with those other tools in and make sure that they are part of this big system and they meet the purpose of the organization and what they are designed to do. So yeah, like you said, it's not one or the other. It's really how making sure that everything in the organization works well to achieve better results. So thank you for this advice. And I think I have some small questions, like rapid fire questions for you, Don, at the end of the session today. So if you want to give like one quick tip for someone who's using the global index and doing the assessment for the first time, what would that be?
I think it's important to follow a certain process. You know, see how your organization measures up to an excellence model by doing the assessment. You can do that on the system that we have, or you can take a look at Appendix 3 in the publication and do it manually. But the next thing is, once you get your results, take a look at how your organization measures up to others. That's when you use the global OE index. And so you can get a feel how you're doing, you know, by size or industry sector, region of the world. And the next step is, in addition to working with your employees on improvement initiatives, take a look at role models. And role models are examples, might be those organizations that have earned an excellence award because they've been vetted, and you can read about their story or speak to them about what they've done, and there's going to be things that you're going to learn from them that are applicable to you. So that's that's the sort of a tip that I would have is this is a real progression that you go through. It's like 3 steps, see how you measure up, see how you compare to others, see what you can learn from others. And it's as simple as that, really. And we're with the kind of system that we've developed, we've designed it all to be very simple and straightforward and time efficient and cost effective. And like you say, it doesn't matter what excellence model or approach you're using, it's going to be beneficial to you to have that information. And it's up to you at the end of the day as a leader to select the exact things that you want to work with in your organization. But you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with this because it dovetails with everything that we do in the quality and excellence area. And all those things are included under the umbrella of an excellence model.
Absolutely. And this is why we start this journey, right? Is to continuously improve, to find out things, the gaps in what we're doing, and make sure that we do things better and design things better, I think, as we move on. So, Don, you mentioned role model and awards. I don't want to put you on the spot here, or you don't have to mention any name, but if you want to choose a role model organization that you've worked with and that is really kind of a role model for excellence, what are the traits? What are the things that you think are very important in that organization?
Well, the traits that they have, I mean, it's it's an awful lot like an athlete that's working towards a gold medal and standing on the podium. The work that they do to develop the mastery and become an expert. And so their performance is above others, and it's something to be, very proud of. And it's those many hours that have got into achieving that pinnacle of success. So it's the mastery. And what you see in organizations that are successful in doing this, you see a real passion within the organization, and that passion is usually the spark that created that is often in the leadership's hands, in the initial stages of saying to the employees, this is what we're going to do, you're involved, this is how we're going to do it, and they're inviting them on this journey.
I like the fact that you're again mentioning passion. I think you've mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast and now again. And it's really goes back to leadership, right? And we're asked a lot of times, I mean, how can I convince my leader or how can I make them really believe in that? And that's where you sit in front of your client and say, that's a tough one, right? Because if the leader doesn't have that spark, it's hard really to motivate people. It's hard to give them that reason to start their journey. And whatever you start without leadership, it's not going to be successful because there's no empowerment, there's no support from top down, which is very important, I think, for excellence. And Don, if I want to ask you just one last question. Now, you mentioned a little bit your journey in the beginning of the podcast and how did you start the Global Index and the framework. So, what inspires you personally to focus on excellence?
Well, I think it's in my blood. You know, I look
That's a
back, I've
great
asked
answer.
myself this question a few times, and I look back, and I grew up in a family. I was surrounded by people who were very, very good at what they did, all sorts of different professionals. And that was so inspirational because I looked around and I thought, well, I want to be just like them. And in everything that I did, I was engaged in sport, and I was engaged in, of course, academic pursuits and business pursuits and everything. I just always had that passion of, wanting to do my best and setting goals and working towards those goals. And so I think it's just well ingrained in me. And I suspect that if you talk to a lot of other quality and excellence professionals, they've got kind of a similar history. There's something
Exactly.
that we have just deep inside of us that makes us go.
And I just want to be like you, Don. So thank you very much for your time here today. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights on the Global Index for Organizational Excellence. To our audience, please connect with Don if you'd like to know more about the model. It helps organization on their path to performance excellence and to organizational excellence, very much needed as we see more challenges in the workspace, more challenges in the market. Organization need to be more competitive. So that's really something that you could take forward and start implementing in your organization. So, to our listeners, if you're considering using the Global Index, what's one thing you'll take away from today's conversation? Please stay connected and tune into our next episode. Thank you very much, Don.
It's my pleasure, Nancy. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast.